Hi, and welcome to VMware Feature Fridays. My name is Guy Bartram. I'm the host of Feature Fridays and a product marketing director in our cloud services business unit. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Nicola Peill-Moelter from VMware and Jennifer Ruch from Equinix. So thank you very much for joining, guys. So Nicola, please, can you introduce yourself? Give us a few words about who you are and what you do.
Absolutely. So my title is Director of Sustainability at VMware, Sustainability Innovation at VMware. And my role is to help find ways that we can help our customers achieve their sustainability goals through more efficient, decarbonized data center operations through our solutions. So how can we innovate to help make the infrastructure more efficient and find ways to decarbonize that infrastructure?
Awesome. And Jennifer, welcome. Can you give us a few words about yourself and what you do?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Jennifer Ruch. I'm the Director of Sustainability at Equinix. Equinix is the world's digital infrastructure company. We build, own, and operate over 220 data centers in 26 countries. And as Sustainability Director, I'm responsible for embedding ESG or sustainability more widely and deeply at our organization. I also lead our measurement and our reporting, as well as our engagement and advocacy on ESG.
Today, we're going to be talking about a new initiative that VMware has launched for our cloud providers, which is Zero Carbon Committed. Now, before we go into this, I'm just going to have to get across that I'm English. So for me, it's ZCC. But I know for you guys, it's going to be ZCC, right?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to just stick with Zero Carbon Committed for now to avoid any confusion. So thank you very much for joining. Nicola, let's talk to you first a little bit about what has VMware taken? What steps have we taken recently in terms of trying to meet carbon neutrality, and what does that meant to the organization? How has this innovation affected us?
Sure. So for many years, VMware was focusing, like many companies, on the internal operations. So making sure we have as high efficiency as possible, that we were using renewable energy, and that we're carbon neutral through offsetting the residual energy through carbon offsets. And we achieved carbon neutrality and 100% renewable energy back in 2018, 2019. But we also recognize that VMware's footprint is very small relative to our customers, our value chain, our suppliers and our customers. And so now we're setting zero carbon targets that also include our supply chain. And the Zero Carbon Committed initiative is actually to recognize that we have a much bigger opportunity across our customers and our partners. And our cloud partners are some of our biggest partners as far as the collective carbon footprint in their data center operations that they provide as a service to our customers running VMware's software. And so what we thought was it would be great to partner with cloud providers who are initially already on a trajectory of 100% renewable energy powered data centers, and then try to use the knowledge of why those partners have set those goals, why they're on that journey, to educate other partners who may not be aware that this is a growing interest to our customers, that our customers are looking for cloud providers who can help them with their own sustainability goals. And that if we can convince them that it's a journey they should also be on, and then a third phase of the program is to help those suppliers, those cloud providers, on their way. Like, how do they go about setting a renewable energy goal? How do they go about procuring renewable energy for their data center operations? So it's just really just a recognition, as an evolution of our ability to have an impact beyond our internal walls, our internal operations.
And Zero Carbon Committed is a part of the environmental scope when we're looking at ESG, which is environment, social, and governance. But it's a fairly major part now, and we're all very aware about the climate crisis that we're currently experiencing. Why has this become a much more relevant conversation in the recent 2 or 3 years than it was before? And why are customers now starting to ask about ESG principles?
Sure. So, I mean, as I think the world knows, we're all actually experiencing climate change firsthand. In California, I'm in California, we're having devastating fires. Germany just had an amazing flood. We're having droughts, more severe hurricanes and storms. So everybody's really starting to understand that climate change is not something that's happening in 2100. It's really affecting the world on a personal level. And for businesses, they recognize that's a risk to their business, right? Their supply chains, their customers, and that there's a need to act. We're also seeing, of course, more action from government. So the EU now is implementing the Green New Deal. There's a lot of regulation and incentives around companies reducing their carbon emissions, reducing their environmental footprint. We're also seeing investors recognizing that climate change is a risk to businesses. And also for some companies, it's an opportunity. And so the investors are looking, are companies managing their climate change risk, and what are they doing around that risk and opportunity? And we're starting to see that shift in where they're putting their money, where they're putting their investments. And then finally, of course, even the talent pool, where employees are the younger generation, they want to work for companies that are addressing not only the environmental issues, but the social issues as well, that they're actually working for a company that has a higher purpose. So we're seeing pressures, companies are seeing pressures from all sectors, as well as internally, and recognizing that they either need to lead or they're going to be left behind. Because today, and to some extent, these are competitive differentiators for companies if they're ahead of the game and acting not only to reduce their risks around climate change, but also to use it as a way to innovate and actually to provide better products and services for customers. So as an example, I'll share a slide. There's an organization called Science-Based Targets, and what that's doing is Science-Based Targets is getting companies to commit to zero carbon goals in alignment with the Paris Climate Accord, which is getting to zero carbon by 2050. And this is just a small logo set of companies that are committing to this goal. So you can see they're very large global cross-sector companies. And any company would love to have these companies as customers. And so they're recognizing that, and these customers don't know how to get to that zero carbon goal by themselves. So they're looking to their supply chain for answers. They're saying, how can you help me achieve my goal? And the Zero Carbon Committed initiative is just a small piece of that. So we can help connect our customers that have these zero carbon goals with cloud providers that are on that journey that can help them at least decarbonize their public cloud services.
Yeah, you mentioned some really good points there. And just Jennifer, to switch over to you as a service provider who is doing exactly that for your customers. What's Equinix's approach to, I guess, the social conscious ESG initiatives that are ongoing at the moment?
Yeah, and I would agree with Nicola that we're seeing pressures as a publicly traded company from all over the map. You have the investor side of the puzzle where investors, specifically the big investors like your BlackRocks, are asking companies to not just deliver financial value, but also ESG value. And they see that as both a risk and opportunity. So we're responding to investor pressure. We also have 10,000 customers. So Equinix is a global co-location data center company. We are a little bit different than some of the hyperscalers in that we service many customers under a single roof. And those customers all have their own unique ESG kind of risks and opportunities, and they are setting their own targets. So like Nicola said, we're in the supply chains of those customers. We want to attract them. We want to retain them. We want to promote our business as being a premier data center company. And we want to do that in a way that's sustainable and differentiates ourselves. And one aspect of sustainability for data centers, or the primary aspect of being environmentally sustainable, is the use of renewable energy. So Equinix setting our renewable goal back in 2015 was an important first step. And since then, we've taken incremental steps to kind of promote our goal, to deliver more value, to address climate change in a more rigorous way. And then partnering with companies like VMware just showcases, the progress we've made and how we can help, additional customers in the value chain bring in their operations and make sure we're all progressing on that climate change pathway.
So I guess it's really good from a customer perspective. If I'm looking to set some expectations around ESGs and some goals for my organization, then to be able to use a cloud provider like yourselves is going to leapfrog me instantly along those lines, right? Because you've already got all of this in place, set up, and like you say, you're striving towards your different stages as you go through this journey. So for me as a potential customer, this is a fantastic leapfrog of setting my ESG initiative.
Yeah, and I think, you know, the partners themselves, like where we can really provide value is a company like Equinix has the size and scale to address renewable energy in a way that like those 10,000 customers can't do themselves. So by partnering with an Equinix or another zero carbon cloud committed provider, you are taking advantage of all the work that we've already done globally, not just in one country, to buy renewables at scale. And we're all decarbonizing at the same time. And, you know, we're looking to our customers to show us the way as well. And we're looking at the big leaders to see what's happening on the innovation side. And together, I think you know, in collaboration in this bigger ecosystem, we're going to achieve these goals.
And you said at the start that Equinix is in, I think you said, did you say 50 countries? It's a very, very large footprint for Equinix globally. So
yeah, we're in 63 markets in 26 countries. So yeah,
okay,
worldwide.
yeah, that's massive. So in certain areas of the world, it's obviously going to be easier to get renewable energy than others. How have you guys kind of lined out a strategy to address that in terms of getting lower carbon policies? You know, it's not obviously something you can do generically across the world in one hit. How are you rolling that out? How complex is that?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's very complex. And when we set our goal back in 2015, we put together a set of renewable energy principles to guide decision making, but realizing that each country is different and the opportunities differ wildly between regions. So of course, we want renewable energy that's local, as close to our sites as possible. We want it to be additive to the grid. So, you know, where we can, we want to make sure that new wind farms or new solar farms are being built because of our contracts. And we want to be able to report that transparently for both ourselves and our customers. On the flip side, what you see is across the world, you've got regulated markets, deregulated markets. You have different types of products that you can buy, and it's complicated navigating that. So we've taken kind of a regional approach to our strategy, working in the different markets depending on what's available, and then at the same time advocating for more renewable energy where it's not available. So you have this policy aspect, which is, I think, increasingly important for companies because we can't buy renewable energy if governments don't allow it. And then you have, of course, this procurement strategy, building out incremental procurement along the way every year, looking for better products, new contract mechanisms, new countries to buy renewables in.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, because a lot of times when I talk about renewable energy, people who haven't sort of gone down this path, they sort of say, oh, well, everybody just buys renewable energy certificates. And it's not really helping. It's not really procuring renewable energy. But actually, the industry's matured, and a renewable energy certificate is just a kind of an accounting mechanism that represents the zero carbon attribute of the electricity that's been generated. So when a renewable energy, say a wind farm, generates 1 megawatt hour of electricity, of renewable electricity, it generates a renewable energy certificate. And technically the owner of that certificate, so you can buy that on the open market separate from the electricity, and that's what we call unbundled RECs. In Europe, it's called guarantees of origin, for example. In Japan, it's JRECs. But it represents a market for renewable energy. And so early on, companies were just buying these unbundled RECs, just sort of saying, well, I use 100 megawatt hours of electricity in the year. I'm going to buy 100 RECs, and I can call myself 100% renewable energy powered. However, and there's actually laws around this. The SEC, is it the FCC? One of those U.S. regulatory agencies, they actually make sure that companies, if they're saying they're procuring renewable energy, that they're actually following the rules for doing that. And what that does is that accounting mechanism makes sure that two companies can't claim the zero carbon attributes of the electricity that was generated, because you've only got one one electron generated and 2 people can't be using that electron, right? So first of all, those are kind of the accounting rules that help to prevent double counting. So that's very important in and of itself. Secondly, companies now, because it's, you know, we talk about greenwashing, right? So Greenpeace very early on was on top of the internet companies like Twitter and Facebook and Apple and other companies, including Equinix at one point and Akamai, whom I used to work for, and making sure that they're one, that they're not just going out and buying these unbundled RECs and say, oh, we're 100% renewable energy powered, right? Because that doesn't, as Jennifer was mentioning, that type of investment going and buying those unbundled RECs, meaning you're buying it separate from the underlying electricity, doesn't help, for the most part, put more renewable energy on the grid. And so companies have made a concerted effort. They recognize we're doing this not so that we can just say, oh, we're green. We're doing it because we truly believe that we need to get more renewable energy on the electricity grid. And so they've worked together, and there's a consortium called the Renewable Energy Buyers Alliance, and it's a consortium of corporate buyers who recognize we need to make this more impactful. We need to find ways to be able to buy renewable energy that's going to actually, our investments actually going to mean that the system is building more renewable energy on the grid. And so there's a development of what's called a virtual power purchase agreement, where companies are going out and directly contracting with renewable energy project developers to say, I'm going to commit to buying your electricity long-term, and that long-term commitment then enables that project to get funded by a bank. So it ends up meaning that that investment can result in actually more renewable energy projects being built around the country. And that's actually been very successful. Because I think there's, it was something like in 2016, there was more renewable energy built on the system because of private corporate purchases than utilities and electric utilities. So the corporate sector really grew that market significantly. And what that does is that now brings down the cost for renewable energy. And it's actually to a point where globally, renewable energy is cheaper than fossil fuel. It's much cheaper than nuclear, coal. It's cost competitive with natural gas, and soon will be lower. And that's even talking about the battery backup for or complements, because obviously when the sun goes down or the wind doesn't blow, the battery systems can provide supplemental electricity. So it's a great success story that the corporate sector intervention in the market has actually accelerated more renewables on the grid.
Yeah, you raised some really good points there. I hadn't really thought about it in that detail, I've got to be honest with you. And yeah, when you think about it, you have your electricity grid for your country, and then that is going to be fed by various different power stations, nuclear, coal, and then there's a whole load of renewable energy going straight into that pipe as well. But you know, in terms of consumption, it's just one grid. So you're absolutely right. These accounting principles, these commodities for renewable energy suddenly got sold in the market, kind of almost guaranteeing that you had them, but then they became a way of hiding the fact that you didn't actually have it. You're just pretending I've got the certificate. I've got something that says I've purchased some renewable credit. But I guess you got to look under the hood, right, and see where that actually is coming from.
And that actually buying the certificate is, well, first of all, regardless of how you procure renewable energy, there will always be a renewable energy certificate involved, unless you've got solar on your roof. And even then, there could be a renewable energy certificate tied to that, the electricity production. So renewable energy certificates are not bad or good. It's just an accounting mechanism. And even from a market perspective, they're also not bad, even these unbundled. It's the price that you pay for that REC. So if it's a substantial cost, that's actually sending a signal to the market to say renewable energy is valuable. The challenge with most unbundled RECs is because they've been generated from wind farms that have been built 20 years ago, they tend to be low cost. And so for the renewable energy developer, it's not a significant revenue source. So it's not something that they can say, oh, this is going to incent us to build more renewable energy plants. So it really just comes down to economics. Is what is the market signal? So actually the virtual power purchase agreement mechanism is, or power purchase agreement. So there, I don't want to explain the terminologies, but the idea is that it's actually helped both parties, because it's helped able to fund more renewable energy projects, but it's also actually a more cost-effective way for the corporation to buy renewable energy, because they can actually, depending on market conditions, can procure that renewable energy at a neutral cost. Whereas if you're buying a REC, that's a fixed cost over time, and so it's guaranteed money out of pocket. Whereas a virtual power purchase agreement, sometimes you can make money, sometimes you can pay money for the renewable energy. So it's actually a much more cost-effective way to procure. So it's complicated, but at the end of the day, it's really driving real change.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's exactly what we need. So this is really fantastic. And Nicola, you understand so much about it. I've just learned a whole load. So thank you so much, Jennifer. I mean, obviously, like our customers, not all of them are going to be able to have a Nicola there to steer them, in this direction. How has Equinix kind of taken upon this initiative and started driving kind of standards into the industry itself?
Yeah, I mean, I think on one hand, there's the procurement of renewable energy, but then on the other hand, there's the measurement and transparency related to that. So the exact accounting, the application of the greenhouse gas protocol to figure out your carbon emissions. And that's one thing Equinix has, we've really tried to build that into our program. So we're not just good at buying renewable energy, which we are. We have 225 megawatts under long-term contract in the VPPA structure, like Nicola mentioned. But we're also working. My team works really closely with customers to help them understand the environmental impacts of their co-location deployments within Equinix. So it's very specific customer conversations. And in fact, we actually issue what's called our Equinix Green Power Report, which is a customized report that I developed to help customers understand their renewable energy coverage in terms of percent and how much electricity they use in our sites, as well as the carbon emissions and the scope 2, which is their electricity-based carbon emissions. So there's two forms of scope 2, one which includes renewable energy, and which is called market-based, and then the second form of scope 2 is called location-based, which is specifically just the geographic kind of carbon footprint of where the sites are located. And so we have this report that really helps customers gain that transparency, so they can understand how renewable they are within Equinix and whether or not our sites are helping them reach their goals. And in many cases, Equinix, so we're 90% renewable globally, and that's at a weighted average across all over the world, including difficult markets like the Middle East, where we can't buy renewables. And then we have many customers who have achieved higher percentages of renewable energy because they're located in more strategic markets that are covered by renewables. So I think it's a good thing if your service providers are willing and able to help you with that measurement and transparency, because otherwise you don't know what the renewable energy percentage or what type of renewables your service providers are buying. And that's one thing we try to do really well at Equinix, is to keep that open line of communication for our customers.
And I understand you're also driving something called the Carbon Neutral Data Center Operator Pact as well. Do you want to elaborate on what that is and how that has come about?
Sure. So as Nicola mentioned earlier, regulatory pressures are growing, across the world, but really specifically in the European Union. And with the European Commission's Green New Deal, we're seeing a real drive for the continent to become net zero by 2050. And the actual European Commission, they want the ICT sector, of which includes data centers, to achieve that goal 20 years earlier by 2030. And we realize that this is important for climate change, it's important for the environment and pollution prevention. So as an industry, we formed a coalition of companies, and it's now called the EU Climate Neutral Data Center Operator Pact. It includes about, I think, 80% of the co-location and data center companies in Europe, as well as industry trade groups who are, important players in the continent. And we brought to the European Commission this framework where we would self-regulate ourselves toward climate neutrality by 2030, toward more aggressive energy efficiency goals for both new and existing sites, toward water conservation goals. And then there were several other smaller goals around circular economy principles and deploying more schemes like district heating, right, to provide ancillary benefits from our sites to the larger communities. So we were, Equinix was instrumental in driving that discussion. We are founding and board members of the European Data Center Association, which is the trade group that was the key point of contact into Brussels. And that was announced in January of 2021 this year. And we're continuing to progress on those other work streams. Obviously, the climate neutral, the renewable energy piece is something that we do really well. And then we're working with those other industry peers to set the efficiency targets and the water targets so that we can really drive data centers to be more sustainable in a holistic way.
So you said 2030. So what happens if you are a service provider with a data center and you aren't abiding by any of these, I guess, legislations by 2030? What's going to happen?
I think it's an interesting question. I think on the financial side, you see the sustainable finance directives where you're going to see companies that can't attract investors if they're not reaching these goals because the investors themselves are being regulated into having to disclose climate change risk. So it's kind of a twofold. There's an operational component that all data centers are driving toward, but then we also want to be able to raise capital and we want to be able to attract new investors. So I think that's a key risk for companies, aside from climate change itself, which is probably should be noted as a key risk for data centers, but the ability to attract capital.
And one of the kind of great things about Equinix, right, is not only do you manage end customers, but you also provide service providers environments in your co-location facilities to deliver their services to their customers. So essentially, when you're looking at, if you're a service provider, you're looking at establishing a point of presence in the country. It's far easier for them to consume from an existing operator like yourselves who've done all this work already, to give them then, or they inherit that stamp of approval from you and from your reports as well. They get complete visibility and transparency of that, which is a key kind of differentiator for them to be able to then attract ESG investors and customers alike into their racks in your data centers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. And Nicola, you had a point about some recent analyst reports around the market for renewable energy for public cloud. Do you want to elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, sure. So Aberdeen is an analyst firm that in the data center cloud space, and they recently did a report, a survey of customers around sort of their goals around zero carbon clouds and or zero carbon commitments. And what they found was that the average annual revenue of the businesses with zero carbon commitments is over 225 million. So as I pointed out earlier, that one logo slide, right, it sort of reconfirms that very large customers and lucrative customers for any cloud provider are setting these goals. And the other thing is that close to about 60% of these businesses either already have zero carbon goals or plan to have them in the next year. And that, so in general, across the board from this survey, 40% of businesses say that sustainability goals are driving their public cloud and virtualization initiatives, and that this number rises to 87% if you're looking at companies that have already set zero carbon goals. So this is clearly a market that's growing very rapidly. And so if it's not on your radar as far as paying attention to this as a requirement from your customers, it should be something that you should be paying attention to and starting to get up the learning curve. And with respect to the learning curve, I mentioned this before, but the Renewable Energy Buyers Alliance. So for both Jennifer and myself, this was a tremendous resource when we were starting early on to how do we set goals around renewable energy powered operations, how do we get educated around it, how do we actually execute on those goals. So the Renewable Energy Buyers Alliance is a nonprofit organization. It's a lot of the activities in the US, but we do have European and Asia Pac membership. REBA is also working on procurement of renewable energy around the globe. So how do we improve government policies to help make buying renewable energy more accessible? How do we make it more cost effective? And then all kinds of resources like accounting principles, primers. How do you talk to your CFO about setting the goals? So they have they have boot camps. Jennifer and I have attended and also been faculty at these boot camps. So I would say that it's a great resource. It's pretty cheap to join to get you started. And they have a summit, and you can learn from other members, because we recognize that this is not something companies can do by themselves, that it's going to take a village, and we all need to work together to accelerate the progress.
And that's great, thank you. I'm sure that's going to be very useful to people who are just entering into this to gain from that valuable experience and battle scars that you've already had. So let's talk a little bit about VMware's initiative then, the Zero Carbon Committed initiative. What does this mean for a service provider? What do I need? Because I mean, from a software perspective, obviously we've made great steps in our software stack with VMware Cloud Foundation. Yeah. We've made great steps in validating our providers with Cloud Verified. How do you become a Zero Carbon Commit partner?
Yeah, so it's actually fairly straightforward. First, we require that you're a Cloud Verified partner, because we recognize that if you're using the full stack of virtualization of compute, storage, and networking, that is the best way to be as efficient as possible in your data center, because it reduces the amount of IT infrastructure you need to run your customer workloads. So secondly, we just require that you as a company have committed to 100% renewable energy powered data center operations by 2030, to be achieved by 2030, and that you've made some progress towards that goal. So right now we're saying by the end of 2021 that you've achieved at least 15% of that goal. A lot of our current partners have already achieved 100%, which is great. And we also check that the renewable energy procurement is backed by these renewable energy certificates or guarantees of origin or similar, so that we know it's sort of a third-party validation that the renewable energy you're procuring is legit. So it's actually quite simple. We're just asking you to verify that you meet those requirements. Yeah.
And then we're obviously, as a part of a benefit to a cloud provider, is we're helping customers find these cloud providers who are.
Yes, that is the benefit, is that once you're a Zero Carbon Committed initiative partner, then when our customers are searching for cloud providers, we have a portal, and they can kind of tick various boxes like, are you cloud verified? Do you have operations in Brazil? And are you Zero Carbon Committed? And then in that case, all of our Zero Carbon Committed partners would show up in the search results, and then the customer can click down on that partner to get more information about their sustainability goals, their renewable energy commitments. So what we're trying to do is recognizing that our customers are looking for partners that can help them with their own sustainability goals. We feel that, one, it's a value to them, so you already have an engaged audience, and then we're making it easier to connect them to our partners that have aligned sustainability goals and are already on the way. And we also promote the partners through social media, through blogs. We're highlighting it at VMworld. So we're really trying to bring as much awareness to the partners around the commitments that they've made, the progress that they're making. So we think it's free advertising basically for these partners.
Like you say, I mean, there was some very big, numbers there around the enterprises that have already committed to this, but that is going to gradually filter down as well to the smaller enterprises as well, as I guess more and more on the market becomes more conscious of the requirements that their customers are looking for. Then it's going to drive more and more kind of, I mean, the big guys have got a lot of cash, so they're able to implement stuff probably a little bit faster than smaller guys, but certainly smaller guys are more agile, so it makes it a little bit easier in that way.
Yeah, and also if you think about it, governments are setting regulations around this.
Yeah.
The Biden administration just put executive orders in around decarbonization of services, so that's a supplier requirement. Universities are also doing this, so there's a lot going on in the public sector that's a huge market. I think the smaller buyers, but for all the cloud providers, yeah.
Excellent. Well, this has been a real lesson for me, and I've learned a lot. And obviously, if you're a cloud provider out there, you've kind of heard today about VMware Zero Carbon Commit program. I'll put the site in the description so you can access that and have a look at it. Jennifer, thank you so much for coming on board. It's really interesting to hear from you around what Equinix has been doing, and just the drive behind this and the momentum behind this in your organization seems to be, really going for it in terms of trying to get that established and making plans to meet your targets and to help your customers meet their ESG targets. So fantastic to see that. Thank you so much for explaining that to me and educating me as well. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks
Nicola,
for having
Jennifer,
me.
no worries. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks.